October 24, 1944, the Sibuyan Sea in the central Philippines. The Imperial Japanese Navy's super battleship Musashi is about to face its ultimate test. This gargantuan warship, among the largest and most powerful ever built, powers forward as wave after wave of American carrier aircraft bear down upon it. Its crew braces at battle stations, determined to fight to the end. Musashi's final engagement during the Battle of Leyte Gulf became a brutal illustration of the changing face of naval warfare, a duel between a leviathan of steel and swarms of planes, ending with one of history's most dramatic sinkings. This is Musashi's origins, journey through World War II, and her final fate. In the late 1930s, Japan set out to build battleships so formidable that no rival could challenge them one-on-one. The result was the Yamato class, and Musashi, named after an ancient Japanese province, was the second of these super battleships. Laid down in 1938 and commissioned in August 1942, Musashi and her sister Yamato were the heaviest battleships ever constructed, each displacing around 73,000 tons at full load. At about 263 meters, or 862 feet in length, and 39 meters in beam, Musashi was a leviathan. Engineers even posted directional arrows in the corridors, because her interior was so vast that crewmen could get lost inside. Musashi carried 9 460mm 18.1-inch Type 94 main guns in 3 giant turrets, the largest naval guns ever mounted on a warship. These could hurl 1.5-ton shells over 40 kilometers, or almost 25 miles. Her secondary battery included a dozen 155mm guns and a host of 127mm dual-purpose guns, complemented by scores of 25mm anti-aircraft guns, a number that would only grow as the war progressed. To withstand enemy fire, Musashi was protected by up to 410mm 16.1 inches of belt armor along her hull and armor up to 200 to 230mm on her decks. The gun turrets were encased in up to 650mm of armor, more than 2 feet of steel. Despite weighing as much as a small town, Musashi could make about 27 knots thanks to powerful steam turbines generating 150,000 shaft horsepower. She carried 6,300 tons of fuel oil, giving her a range of around 7,200 nautical miles at 16 knots, enough to steam across the Pacific and back. Japan built Musashi and her sisters to counter the numerically superior US Navy with sheer size and firepower. Each Yamato-class ship was meant to be individually superior to any American battleship, a floating fortress capable of taking tremendous punishment while delivering knockout blows with its 18-inch guns. In essence, Musashi was designed as the ultimate battleship, the centerpiece of Japan's decisive battle strategy. Commissioned in the summer of 1942, Musashi entered service as the war's tide was beginning to turn against Japan. She was soon fitted out as the flagship of the combined fleet, replacing her sister Yamato. In early 1943, Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto and later Admiral Minechi Koga used Musashi as their command ship, a role befitting her stature. Based out of Truk Lagoon, Japan's formidable naval fortress in the Caroline Islands, Musashi sortied with the fleet on several occasions in 1943, attempting to intercept elusive US task forces, but these missions never made contact with the enemy. The great battleship often spent weeks waiting at Truk, as the Pacific War evolved into a carrier and submarine-driven conflict that gave few opportunities for battleship duels. In October 1943, for example, Musashi led a large task force in response to a rumored American carrier raid on Wake Island. The force, under Admiral Koga, included multiple battleships and carriers, a chance for Musashi to steam into action. But the Americans never materialized. The fleet returned to base without firing a shot. By the end of that year, Musashi had yet to engage enemy surface ships. Instead, she was often employed as a transport or prestige vessel. And as Japan's strategic situation worsened, this huge battleship even ferried troops and supplies to beleaguered island garrisons in early 1944, a far humbler task than the titanic gun battles for which she'd been built. Musashi's first battle damage came not from a surface action, but from under the waves. On March 29, 1944, while sailing off Palau, Musashi was ambushed by the American submarine USS Tunney. The sub fired a spread of torpedoes, and one struck Musashi near her bow. A thunderous explosion rattled the ship. Though her thick armor held together, the hit tore a hole in the forward hull, causing significant flooding. Musashi limped away from Palau that night and returned to Japan for repairs. In dry dock, engineers fixed her bow and took the opportunity to bolster her anti-aircraft defenses dramatically. Dozens of additional 25mm AA guns were installed, recognizing the growing threat of Allied air power. By mid-1944, Musashi bristled with over 100 anti-aircraft barrels, ready to throw up a curtain of flak. This refit would prove timely. Her next trial would be fending off aerial attack. In June 1944, Musashi joined Admiral Takeo Kurita's Second Fleet as US forces invaded the Mariana Islands. What followed was the Battle of the Philippine Sea, a massive carrier showdown, nicknamed the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot by US pilots, that saw Japan's once formidable naval air arm nearly wiped out. Musashi and other surface ships sailed as part of the Japanese fleet, but the battle was decided entirely by aircraft. The American carriers' Hellcat fighters and shipboard anti-aircraft fire annihilated Japan's air groups. Musashi never fired her main guns in that engagement. After this defeat, the Japanese Navy was left with very few trained pilots and barely any functioning carriers. Their remaining battleships, Musashi included, would now have to fight under skies ruled by the enemy. As one Japanese observer noted, after the Philippine Sea, the fleet had no air cover. The battleships would have to rely on their own AA guns and hope for the best. This grim reality set the stage for Musashi's final mission. By October 1944, the United States had landed on Leyte in the Philippines, aiming to cut off Japan from its crucial resource areas. In response, the Japanese High Command launched Operation Shogo, a last-ditch plan to throw virtually the entire Japanese fleet at the Allied invasion force. The plan was complex and daring. A northern force of Japan's last carriers, with very few planes left, would sail as a decoy to lure Admiral Halsey's US Third Fleet away. Meanwhile, Musashi and the main striking force, dubbed the Center Force, would rush through the Philippine archipelago to fall upon the Leyte landing beaches from the west. Vice Admiral Takeo Kurita commanded this center force, which assembled in Brunei Bay, Borneo. On October 20th, 1944, Musashi departed Brunei as part of a massive armada. 5 battleships, including Yamato and Musashi, 10 heavy cruisers, 2 light cruisers, and numerous destroyers steamed toward the Philippines. The crew of Musashi knew this voyage was likely to bring the decisive battle they had trained for. Many were eager. Finally, the proud battleship would confront the enemy. But they also understood the dangers. The fleet had hardly any air support, and American carrier aircraft were expected to pounce. As Musashi headed into the Sibuyan Sea on October 24, 1944, everyone aboard could sense that a titanic confrontation was hours away. At dawn on October 24th, Kurita's center force entered the Sibuyan Sea, a broad stretch of water ringed by Philippine islands. The morning was partly cloudy, the sea calm, visibility was good. Just after 8 a.m., reports came in that 2 Japanese heavy cruisers, including Kurita's flagship Otago, had been sunk by US submarines during the night, and Admiral Kurita had survived by swimming to another ship. It was a stark reminder that danger lurked from all directions. Undeterred, the remaining ships pressed on towards San Bernardino Strait. A few hours later, lookouts on Musashi spotted the telltale silhouettes of American reconnaissance planes high above, consolidated PB-4Y patrol bombers shadowing the fleet. The alarm was raised. Musashi went to general quarters. By 10:30 a.m., dozens of dots appeared in the sky to the east, inbound US carrier aircraft. The Battle of the Sibuyan Sea had begun, and Musashi was at the epicenter of the storm. Massive water geysers from near misses and torpedo hits erupt around the battleship's hull as she endures a concentrated aerial onslaught. In this first wave, dive bombers plant several bombs on Musashi's deck, while torpedo planes score hits below the waterline. The battleship's gunners respond with furious anti-aircraft fire, filling the sky with black puffs of flak. Musashi reels from the impacts. One torpedo blows open her port side near the bow, and a 500-pound bomb penetrates her deck, killing crew and igniting fires. But the giant ship plows onward. Her crew swiftly counterfloods compartments to offset a growing list from the torpedo damage. Within minutes, damage control teams are fighting fires and patching leaks, even as the air attack continues overhead. The first attack is soon followed by a second and then a third, as the US Navy throws the kitchen sink at Musashi. In total, Admiral Halsey has dispatched around 259 carrier aircraft in at least 6 separate waves from the fleet carriers: Intrepid, Essex, Lexington, Franklin, and Enterprise. Swarms of Curtiss SB-2C Helldiver dive bombers and Grumman TBF Avenger torpedo bombers take turns diving and torpedoing the Japanese formation. Recognizing Musashi as the biggest threat, many pilots single out the great battleship for attack. The air is filled with the scream of diving planes and the thunder of Musashi's own guns, her 127mm dual-purpose cannons, and dozens of 25mm guns blaze away in curtain fire. Still, not all the attackers can be stopped. Torpedoes streak in from multiple directions, cunningly aimed at alternating sides of the ship. Torpedo after torpedo slams into Musashi, ripping open her hull, both port and starboard. A hit to starboard floods another engine room. The loss of power causes her to slow and list further. Bombs rain down, smashing her upper works. One scores a direct hit on the bridge, killing or injuring many of the command staff. Through it all, Musashi's crew fights back doggedly, bringing down several aircraft. Some accounts say Japanese gunners shot down or damaged about 18 US planes that day. But the onslaught is unrelenting. An American pilot from Enterprise, Dan Smith, remembers attacking in early afternoon. When we emerged from the clouds, they opened up with flak like the hammers of hell. I saw all 8 of our torpedo planes score hits on the bow of Musashi, and 5 direct hits from our bombers. The last time I saw Musashi, she was stopped dead in the water, and her entire forecastle was awash. Indeed, by about 13:30, Musashi was gravely wounded, dipped low from massive flooding, and she gradually fell out of formation, drifting to a stop. Even as Musashi struggles, the US flyers return for one more deadly round. In the 5th and 6th waves, late in the afternoon, they concentrate on finishing off the drifting Leviathan. Grumman Avengers launch torpedoes aimed at Musashi's starboard side, seeking to punch holes in compartments not yet flooded. Dive bombers target the base of her smokestack and her stern. With only 3 of 4 propellers working and several boiler rooms drowned, Musashi can no longer dodge. She absorbs hit after hit. By the time the air attacks finally cease around 15:30, Musashi has sustained an almost unimaginable level of damage. Observers estimate she was hit by roughly 17 bombs and 19 torpedoes in total during the day's attacks. Many more near misses had stoved in her hull plating and further compromised her stability. It was punishment beyond anything any battleship had ever endured. Incredibly, Musashi remained afloat, a testament to her construction, but it was clear she was dying. On the shattered bridge, Captain Toshihira Inaguchi, who was also a rear admiral, assesses the situation. The ship is settling by the bow and listing severely to port despite desperate counter-flooding. Fires rage in the lower decks. Ammunition magazines are in danger of submerging or exploding. Rather than let his ship sink in deep water, Inaguchi gives orders to head for the nearest land in hope of beaching Musashi on the shallow coast of Boreas Island to save her. The engineering crews try to comply, coaxing the remaining engines to turn over. Musashi begins moving at about 6 knots, but her wounds are too grave. She soon loses power completely and comes to a final halt. With water pouring uncontrollably into her forward sections, the bow of Musashi dips under the surface. Inaguchi, who had vowed to go down with his ship, radios a last message and dismisses himself to his cabin, refusing to evacuate. Around 7:15 that evening, Musashi's crew assembles on deck as the abandon ship order is finally passed. The surrounding escort destroyers, Kiyoshimo, Isokaze, and Hamakaze, move in as close as they dare to pick up survivors. Musashi's remaining officers ensure as many wounded as possible are offloaded onto rafts. Just after 7:30, as darkness falls, the mighty battleship's final moments come. She lists further to port, her bow plunging under. Sailors scramble off her decks and into the oil-streaked sea. With a thunderous roar of imploding compartments, the Musashi rolls over to port and sinks, bow first, into the Sibuyan Sea. Her stern rises briefly, screws still, and then slips under, leaving a mushroom cloud of steam, smoke, and debris on the surface. Out of Musashi's crew of 2,399 officers and men, some 1,376 survivors are rescued from the water by the escorting destroyers. Tragically, over 1,000 others perish with the ship, including Captain Inaguchi, who kept his promise to share his vessel's fate. Japan's largest battleship had finally succumbed to her wounds. The sinking of Musashi sent shockwaves through the Japanese fleet. Strategically, Musashi's loss was emblematic of the broader disaster that was the Battle of Leyte Gulf for Japan. In the 4-day struggle from October 23rd to 26th, 1944, the Imperial Japanese Navy gambled almost all its remaining capital ships and lost badly. Musashi was one of 3 battleships sunk during the battle. The others were Yamashiro and Fuso at Surigao Strait, and Japan's last functioning aircraft carriers were sacrificed as decoys. The once proud combined fleet was shattered as an effective fighting force. After Leyte Gulf, the Imperial Japanese Navy had little left in the tank. The few surviving big ships, like Yamato, were relegated to bases in Japan, waiting for a final opportunity to die gloriously. Musashi never reached the transports she was meant to annihilate, thanks to the aggressive US carrier strikes in the Sibuyan Sea. The battle demonstrated in the starkest terms the supremacy of air power over even the largest battleships. A ship that was virtually impervious to gunfire succumbed to bombs and torpedoes delivered by carrier aircraft miles away. This was a watershed moment. The age of the battleship as the dominant force at sea had passed. Leyte Gulf proved to be the last major fleet engagement of the war, and it confirmed that aircraft carriers now ruled the waves. The loss of Musashi reverberated through the remainder of World War II. The sight of her sinking, one of the largest warships ever built, vanquished by swarms of airplanes, was a sobering validation of a lesson learned at Pearl Harbor and Midway, and now conclusively proven at Leyte Gulf. For the officers and men who survived Musashi's final battle, it was an agonizing ordeal that stayed with them forever. For Japan, it was a national tragedy and a blow to morale, even kept secret from the public for a time. And for the world, Musashi's end marked the twilight of the battleship era. The story of Musashi's last stand in the Sibuyan Sea serves as a dramatic chapter in naval history, of a mighty ship's defeat, and of the inexorable rise of a new form of warfare that rendered such leviathans obsolete.